The Silent Marksman. Chapter 1. Arrival in Eden. The Welsh mountains loomed majestically against the backdrop of a sky painted with the hues of an autumn sunset. Lisa, the organizer of their spontaneous escape, tapped the steering wheel of the rickety van they had rented, feeling a sense of triumphant anticipation tingling in her fingertips. Her eyes flickered towards the rearview mirror, catching sight of Emily, nestled between Mark and Tom, her head bobbing along to the rhythm of a song only she could hear. Lisa smiled. Emily was always in her own world. "Are we there yet?" Mark's voice broke the humming tranquility inside the van, bringing forth affectionate groans from the group. Mark was always the one to inject humor or complaints when the monotony set in, usually an endearing trait, but Lisa had spent the last 2 hours reassuring him of their proximity to paradise. "Almost," she replied, feigning exasperation while throwing him an amused glance. "Would you like to walk the rest of the way?" "Nope, I've already started tying invisible jetpacks to my feet," he retorted, flashing her a grin as Emily mocked him with an exaggerated, sleepy expression. Laughter rippled through them, buoying their mood as they turned onto the gravel path leading into the heart of the Welsh wilderness. Sarah, the last-minute addition to their circle, sat quietly by the window, her gaze lost among the titanic silhouettes of the forest. Lisa remembered the uncertainty she'd felt about inviting her. Sarah was Emily's new friend from work, and although tales of Sarah's warmth and keen wit eased her hesitation, it still lingered, like a leaden weight in the corner of her mind. The campsite was exactly as described, an unspoiled haven nestled within the embrace of nature. The thick green canopy soared high above them, with sunlight filtering through in dappled bursts. Tom, their thrill-seeker, leaped out of the van, arms wide open as if to embrace the mountains themselves. "This," he declared, "is bliss." "Looks like a postcard," Sarah murmured, her voice wrapping around appreciation and awe, dispelling some of the hesitance Lisa had tethered to her. The group wasted no time in setting up the campsite. Tents were pitched in a semicircle around the planned fire pit, each stake driven into the soft, loamy earth with growing enthusiasm. Conversations melded with the symphony of the woods, birds chirping, leaves rustling, a gentle reminder they were enveloped by life's untouched beauty. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of twilight blue and burnt orange, they gathered around the flickering flames of their campfire. Hot chocolate in mugs, along with an extravagant variety of marshmallows, soon became the staples of their evening. Underneath the canopy of stars, the conversation traversed familiar grounds. Mark's latest debacles in the city, Tom's plans for his next climbing expedition, Emily's gentle reassurances all around. Sarah listened, sometimes adding her own tales, oftentimes opting to let the friendship around her absorb her words silently. An unspoken bond took root beneath the stars that night, nurtured by the perceived impermeability of the world beyond their campfire. Little did they know, this night of newfound unity would serve as both haven and haunting memory, with the turn of events destined to shake their core. As sleep beckoned, one by one, they retreated to their tents, leaving the fire to sputter and smolder into embers. Lisa stayed awake a little longer, soaking in the surreal serenity around her, thinking that perhaps they'd found their Eden. Had any of them bothered to glance back into the inky stretch of the forest, they might have caught a glint, a fleeting flicker not of stars, but of something more sinister grazing their sanctuary's boundaries. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Woods. The next morning came with the languid caress of sunlight filtering through the trees and the chirrup of distant birds pulling the campers from sweet slumber. Coffee brewed in battered percolators lent a fragrant warmth to the crisp morning air, entwining with the distant hum of life among the pines. Lisa emerged from her tent, stretching lazily. Her morning routine was infused with an optimism that matched the dawn. As organizer, she felt responsible for ensuring everyone could taste the freedom and rejuvenation she had envisioned for them in these mountains. Mark was already awake, regaling an amused Tom with his latest idea for one of his infamous pranks, something involving a rubber spider and Sarah's sinfully eloquent reactions to trivial surprises. His face split into a broad grin as he noticed Lisa approaching. "Ah, our fearless leader joins us," he exclaimed, wrapping her in an overly enthusiastic hug. You two are impossibly loud for this hour, Lisa laughed, managing to untangle herself from Mark's exuberance. What grand scheme are you plotting now? Before Mark could respond, Emily and Sarah emerged from their tents, yawning and stretching under the morning sun. They joined the group by the fire, where Tom was whipping up a makeshift breakfast of eggs and toast over the flame. Despite the jovial banter as they ate, Lisa felt a slight but nagging discomfort. It was that subtle niggle one gets when the world outside feels destined to shift dramatically, the calm before the storm. After breakfast, the group decided to explore the nearby trails. The map Lisa had brought was spread out on a log, with Tom suggesting they attempt a short hike to a nearby waterfall marked in sketched blue ink. Their enthusiasm crescendoed with this prospect, and soon they were traipsing through the thick, consuming green of the forest, laughter echoing amidst the trees. The path snaked beneath towering oaks and between whorls of ancient ferns, leading the group deeper into nature's embrace. Along the way, they stumbled upon a carpet of wildflowers painting the forest floor in hues of purples and golds, seemingly an offering of nature's art. Sarah knelt to run her fingers across the petals, clearly touched by such unspoiled beauty. "You don't see things like this in the city," she murmured, her voice tinged with wonder. Emily crouched beside her, sharing the moment with a serene smile. As they continued, Mark recounted tales of his past camping misadventures, fueling their laughter. Yet it wasn't Mark's antics that stood out to Lisa during their hike, but rather Sarah. She was opening up more vividly than the day before, and it endeared her to the group, each revelation and candid remark peeling back layers to reveal a multifaceted mosaic of experiences. By the time they reached the waterfall, the sun stood proud overhead, casting prismatic rays through the misty spray. The water crashed defiantly against the rocks, creating a symphony of nature's power, a perfect culmination to their morning. Tom, ever the adventurer, stripped down to his swimsuit and leapt into the pool at the base, surfacing with a triumphant whoop that echoed through their secluded sanctuary. The others followed, splashing and reveling in the cold embrace of the mountain waters. Time and worries slipped away, and as their laughter danced in the air, Lisa allowed herself to believe that perhaps the escape had been a perfect idea after all. But destiny often shadows joy with dread, and the warmth of the day began to yield as the sun dipped into afternoon, ushering unforeseen shadows back into their camp. Chapter 3: The Terrible Red Dot. By afternoon, the group found themselves lazily sprawling in the sun-dappled clearing beside their tents, basking in the glow of their adventure. The air was filled with relaxed conversation and the occasional hum of a distant bee. Mark was attempting to impress Sarah with a convoluted card trick while the others lounged about, sipping on more of the campfire-brewed coffee. Lisa soaked up this serene scene, feeling the threads of a cherished memory weaving tight bonds with these friends. It was Sarah's triumphant laughter that cleaved the fragile peace. "Ha! Beat ya!" she exclaimed, her voice carrying through the clearing as she set down the winning card. The laughter lingered, a transient echo swallowed by the forest before it happened. A red dot appeared, a novice painter's careless splash of color against the pale canvas of Sarah's shirt. It took a split second for the reality to register, a brief, cruel twist of comprehension, before the soundless bullet struck. Sarah collapsed, cut from her laughter, leaving the rest of the group frozen in collective horror. Her laughter's ghost still simmered in their ears, a haunting reminder of joy eclipsed by savagery. "Sarah!" Emily's scream pierced the disbelief, ripping the group from paralysis. They scrambled to her side, minds barely able to process what their eyes had witnessed. Blood stained the earth beneath Sarah, her gasps gulping at air, disjointed and desperate. Panic ensued, an unbridled chaos of fear and confusion. Tom, instinct for survival ignited, grabbed Lisa and Mark, pulling them behind the nearest trees, his voice a whisper of urgent commands over the chaos. Emily knelt beside Sarah, her hands tremulous as they pressed against the wound, a futile attempt to slow the crimson tide. "Stay with me, Sarah," Emily pleaded, eyes glossy with terror. The others gathered around in a disoriented huddle, hearts pounding a chaotic mantra in their chests. "Where?" Tom gasped, scanning the dense foliage for any signs of their unseen assailant. There was nothing. only the oppressive silence receding to hide behind the canopy of leaves, as if the woodland itself conspired to mask the source of death. "Why us?" Lisa breathed, the reality crashing over her with the weight of the mountains themselves. Her voice was a hollow, haunted whisper, lost in the cacophony of their thundering heartbeats. "No idea," Mark replied, all traces of his usual humor stripped away, his face ashen and tense. Tom's mind raced, recalling old tales of hunters gone rogue, of legends that spanned eras, while adrenaline coursed through him, altering his focus. "We need to move," he urged, low and steady, as Emily sobbed over Sarah, platinum streaks cutting through a face she once knew only with smiles. But it was Sarah's hand squeezing Emily's in a fractured farewell that steeled them into action. There would be time for grief, for despair, but not now. Now, they needed survival. Emily nodded, biting back her anguish. She closed Sarah's eyes with a tender, trembling touch and forced herself to rise. They were exposed, targets waiting to be picked off by an invisible foe in a game they didn't agree to play. With Sarah's loss hanging between them like a dire forecast, the group crawled into the thicket, both blind and vulnerable. Chapter 4. Into the Unknown. Through the dense netting of pine and underbrush, the group made their flight, hoping to find sanctuary beyond the sniper's eye, if such a place existed. Their only chances lay in the winding paths of the forest that seemed to shield as much as betray their movements. Each step in the forest seemed to echo loud betrayals to their invisible predator. Every snap of a twig underfoot birthed paranoia anew, yet still they pressed on. Each friend clung to a trunk or brush, praying the foliage would obscure them enough for a moment of reprieve. Time elongated in the silence, broken only by their staggered breaths and whispers of encouragement between them. Lisa took the lead, her earlier optimism now a stubborn resolve that bordered on defiance against whatever fate sought to claim them. They pressed deeper into the woods, bramble tearing their clothes, earth clinging to their sneakers. Their progress slowed to a crawl as the terrain grew more sinister, contours darkened by the dimming twilight. At last, in a glade rimmed with sentinel-like pines, they allowed themselves to settle. Exhaustion seeped into their bones, yet relief remained a stranger. Here, crouched beneath the tangled embrace of ancient roots, they paused, ears straining for any sound that wasn't their own breath. "What now?" Mark's voice cracked the dense quiet like shattering glass, his eyes searching the others for a sliver of certainty. Lisa took a moment to gather herself, and despite the beating chaos in her chest, she found her voice calm and steady. "We need to figure out why this is happening, or at least evade it until we have a plan." Tom, perched on the balls of his feet, scoured their surroundings with frantic suspicion. "This isn't random. It can't be," he argued, piecing together an incoherent image of adversarial reasoning in his mind. Emily nodded absently, still pale but quiet, her earlier sobs reduced to tear tracks staining her cheeks. "We draw straws," she intoned vaguely. Mark and Lisa turned toward her, interest piqued. "Straws?" Mark asked. "Whoever gets the short one, they're bait," Emily explained, her mind diving into radical territory. "They run one way, we scatter another. It's an old tactic, but might save us." "No one's running anywhere yet," Lisa vetoed, gaze firm. "There must be another way." Silence settled thickly, oppressive with expectancy and unsaid fears. Because beneath the gravity of choices made and not made, of silent leaves brushing against bark, celebrating an eternal witness to human plight, they all knew the truth. Every moment they spent in this forest, they were not just campers or friends anymore. They were the hunted. As the sky eventually surrendered to night, shrouding the forest in shadow and uncertainty, plans were made and agreed upon in whispers. They would make for the valley in the morning, seeking low land aided by cover. But for now, even the smallest shift could ignite futures unforeseen into action. They stayed awake that night, listening to the symphony of their pounding hearts and the unnerving quiet of the wilderness. Trust wavered thinly with fatigue and fear, just as each friend resolved fragments of their past misgivings and betrayals, their secret fears confronting them in the cloak of darkness. Chapter 5. Secrets and Shadows. The night passed with agony. Each of them lay motionless under their makeshift shelter, eyes open to the darkness, consumed by thoughts of survival. The woods, a whispering god of secrets, cradled their group in its indifferent embrace. Crickets orchestrated their midnight symphony, giving false assurances that life went on as normal, even as a killer lurked in their midst. As first light etched its way through the canopy, morning dew clung stubbornly to their skin. Wariness and fear bound them together with an invisible cord, tightening with each shared look and unsaid word. They needed answers just as much as they needed to escape. Over a quiet murmuring of dried leaves and muffled footsteps, a plan formed, a tentative escape laden with uncertainties. First, they would head down the valley near the eastern trail. The terrain was rugged, but it offered both cover and potential routes out of the forest. But another question lay curiously ignored, festering in their minds. Why were they being targeted? As they traversed cautiously through the forest, skirting thick trunks and ducking under low-hanging branches, the question transformed into a gnawing suspicion. Hidden tensions emerged as silent disagreements, and the group, once tightly knit, became frayed at the edges. Mark, usually one to deflect with humor, could no longer evade the gravity of their situation. "Do you think it's not random?" Lisa stayed silent, focusing on carefully picking a path through the underbrush. Tom cast a backward glance, his face molded by fatigue, but eyes still sharp. "It could be anything. Random, intentional, something we missed. But we can't get caught up in paranoia." "Can't we?" Emily challenged softly, her empathy strained beyond its limits. Her gaze flickered to Sarah's absent place, and an unspoken question mingled with doubt that shadowed her features. Did one of them harbor secrets, or even hold a magnet to this chaos? The question hung between them like a looming storm cloud. Each member of the group wore their own cloak of suspicions. Alliances, once clear, blurred under the pressure of survival. Nightmares walked with them as they moved between the looming trunks. Every crunch of the forest floor felt amplified, every whisper of wind a threat. They communicated in glances and gestures, reinforcing their plan, a path to freedom that lay obscured in the heart of the valley. As they ascended a slope, catching glimpses of the path they'd trekked and the footprint of the valley below, exhaustion converged with a flicker of hope. Here, they paused again, settling among the rocks and moss-covered dampness to gather strength. But now, sitting in a brief respite within the confines of forest life, truths waited to be unearthed. Unspoken questions balanced on their tongues, as volatile as the trails themselves. In the timid silence, Tom finally spoke, his voice steady yet laced with reluctant trust. "Does anyone else feel," Mark inhaled sharply, "like we've been targeted?" Lisa set her gaze firmly on the group, her earlier hesitance resolute. "We need to be sure, Tom. Until then, we focus on getting out alive." But uncertainty fluttered in his eyes. "Sure, Lisa, but it doesn't explain," he trailed off, casting his gaze toward Emily, whose face blanched at the unspoken implications. Her silence spoke of secrets yet to surface from the depths of memory. The shadows played tricks with their minds, turning camaraderie to complexity with each passing moment. As tension simmered, they chose resolve over revenge, survival over speculation. No alliances formed, but wary trust layered itself over their intentions, pressing them forward into their shared escape. Still, underlying that resolve lay knowledge of human fallibility, the fragile hopes sheltering hidden truths beneath layers of comfortable lies. Chapter 6: The Secrets We Keep. Every step into the valley felt laborious, each detection of a sound behind them a potential revelation. In the shadow of uncertainty, fractures in their collective trust widened, the disappearance of shared laughter replaced with muted resolve. As morning's glow heralded the return of day, they emerged exceptionally cautious from the cover of trees upon the razor edge of an escarpment. Dawn illuminated a sinuous path stretching beneath them, a potential tributary to safety, if only they could venture undetected for just a mile more. "Breathe," Lisa whispered more to herself than her friends, but her exhale muted before reaching them as their trek recommenced, serrated terrains lending uncertainty to every punctuated step. They picked their way across thick roots and erupted stone, hopping light-footed as tensions hovered unresolved. Mark lingered back slightly, that observed silence cocooning vivid thoughts. As one always veiled by humor, unease harbored no stone unturned in his increasingly questioning psyche. Words sifted through Mark's clouded conscience, and whatever misplaced loyalty he had remained resolute until then, shifted and cracked. At a widening part of the trail, where they paused to gather their bearings, Mark's voice broke through the forest's silent symphony. "I've been thinking, is there something one of us might know that could be worth targeting?" The question echoed, heavy with implications, interrupting the march of their uncertainty. Each face turned as stone, all truths and defenses rising to meet the insinuation. The terrain lay dormant beneath sudden disquiet, every leaf and shadow holding its breath. Lisa, holding their gaze with unwavering intensity, shook her head. "This isn't the time to cast suspicion. Look where we are and remember what matters." "But we have to consider." Mark started, but Lisa's glare silenced him, a reminder of their shifting focus back from interrogations to sheer survival. Emily drew in a deep breath, exhaling shakily as her heart pounded the rhythm of secrets. "I can't bear this," she murmured. "Then tell us," Tom encouraged gently, the old bonds of friendship resurfacing, reinforcing his stance against the growing weight of distrust. For a moment, Emily hesitated. The choice between silence embroiled in mystery or freedom burdening souls with pain drifted like smoke between them. "My brother was involved with something shady before he disappeared," she confessed, words tumbling like leaves caught in an unyielding breeze. "And I think they might think I know something valuable or dangerous. I don't know, it's just a feeling." Her admission released a tangled pressure, leaving her feeling exposed, yet somehow lighter within the forest's grasp. The others absorbed Emily's revelation, searching for links between their own knowledge and what this possibly could mean for them, the forest becoming both jury and defense in their quest to reconcile what Emily shared with reality. "Emily, you never told us." Lisa's voice was quieter, laden with warmth rather than accusation. "I didn't realize it would affect you," Emily admitted. "I thought if I kept things quiet, if they forgot me." Her gaze dropped to the packed trail between them, the line where revelation met reality. They lapsed into reflective silence as they tried to absorb the ramifications of Emily's fears, while contending with the urgency of the here and now. But the truth incarnate was no longer an unknowable ghost, but a companion in the echoing trees. This very knowledge sowed intricacies between their bonds, uncertainty transforming into cautious solidarity driven by survival instincts. Tom sighed, the forest stretching endless with its dark shadows. "We have to move. Trust the little we know, or get stuck forever in a net made from our suspicions," Mark finished, agreement in his resolve as they endeavored toward the goal scrabbled upon born-again resources. Their pace quickened, unity reforming under shared purpose. Just beyond the wraith of trees, where sunlight-kissed fallen leaves in auburn stretches across their path, lay the promise of long-veiled refuge closing within their grasp. Chapter 7. The Final Gauntlet. In the dim eclipse between dawn and the glory of full morning, the forest slinked between degrees of twilight. The trail, masked as one of whispers and veils, led their almost assured descent toward the valley's cradle. Lisa's mind raced alongside her pulse, documenting what trees and paths might mark their next steps toward freedom, even as something sinister and unseen dogged their heels. Thoughts of the revelations looped through each step. Emily's admission had painted their target in uncertain colors, yet their loose formation pressed on with a shared specter of temptation toward deeper trust than ever imagined. Their mounting anticipation strained reality's tense fabric, each veiled inch coaxing them perceptibly closer to finally being without fear among the open expanse of the land. But the forest hadn't relinquished its grip just yet. An arrow of doubt mapped their veins as night brushed aside for day, a reminder that hope often stepped too close beside its twin, paranoia. As the canopy fractured, opening beneath the brilliance of high sun, a path appeared, sloping slightly as it waved beneath the horizon at the end, where safety tangled with ambitions fulfilled and losses mended, as once distant fears dissolved in shrinking half-shadows. Yet the feeling enveloped them, the way autumn crowns fields in harvest etchings of red and gold, a longing cascade for imminent dangers yet unforgotten. Tom motioned ahead toward what appeared unmapped salvation, heralding vivid future possibilities veiled just within reach. "Do you see?" But something hums louder, an instinct pricking at the back of their reconciliation. the reflection of sun off glass, the soft crunch of the underfoot. Their seamless tension snapped by the presence they could never outrun again when the first shot rang free, a sound that tightened the strings of their hearts, momentous and silent against the chaos that unfolded. Lisa shouted commands beneath the threat discerned. Unity scrambled in every direction amidst deafening echoes. The tranquility of the valley shattered into chaos as they scattered for cover, each one desperately trying to evade the sniper's deadly gaze. With their earlier reconciliation thrown aside by immediate threat, they struck an instinctive formation, orchestrating into hiding places beneath thick boughs and tangled brush. Their breaths mingled with the forest air, quickened and tinged with unyielding resolve. Lisa and Emily found shelter behind a wall of bracken and moss, the familiar earthy scent grounding them to the urgency of survival. Mark veered to crouch low behind an ancient oak, its gnarled roots forming a natural barricade. Tom and Sarah dove toward a thicket, huddling beneath the protective canopy. Time splintered into torturous segments, long stretches of silence punctuated by solitary yet terrifying shots fired from an unseen adversary. Each bullet echoed louder than the last, underscoring their isolation in this deadly game. "It's like they're playing with us," Tom muttered, voice a fragile whisper of fury laced over fear. He cast a glance at Sarah, who was pale but determined to avoid the fate that had befallen their friend. Emily's thoughts swirled around what she had divulged, the consequence of her brother's shadows now cast over them, endangering those she'd come to love as family. "We can't stay here," Lisa said, her words sharp as they cut through the haze of dread. Her mind skittered across plans like a dancer across coals. "We have to think smart. Emily might be the target, but separating only makes us easier marks." Working with renewed purpose, Lisa quietly formulated her strategy, assigning roles with quick efficiency. Tom's forte in diversionary tactics primed to act as strategic decoy, while the others moved silently through the curling paths beyond. As their breathing steadied into determination, a new slow breath, laden with power and pain, united their movements. The forest loomed around them, no longer indifferent to their plight, but a silent participant waiting on their resolve. Tom, gesturing a wordless agreement, took his role to heart, formulating a risky maneuver he'd bank on to scatter the sniper's attention, a human mirage intended to deceive long enough for Lisa's strategy to take root. The remaining group collected their composure, drawing strength from raw desperation melded into fragmented unity. The presence that had threatened to overwhelm them now reformed beneath a deliberate formation of instinct and trust. Tom glanced once to ensure Lisa was ready. Her eyes held his, unspoken allegiance flashing between them as their shared silence reverberated clarity. He was the departure line that recoiled their entry into unknown freedom. "Be safe," Tom whispered, more prayer than plan. His heart hammered rebellion against the mere promise of fear. With a final nod, he bolted, feet striking rhythm to rustling truths buried beneath leaves, drawing the enemies into action beyond precision. Chapter 8. Final Reckoning. Tom sprinted through the trees, weaving between hedge and brush as fear infused adrenaline into each powerful stride. He could sense, more than hear, the sniper's focus shift onto him, a silent predator in its chilling precision. Shots resumed, racing past his ears like angry wasps, narrowly missing him as they thudded into trunks meant to cradle life rather than death. The commotion gave the others the opportunity they needed. Lisa, Emily, Mark, and Sarah moved as one toward their hope's salvation, the sniper's calculated shots diverting no longer a trap but a guide, an admonition to survive and escape. Under Franz bowed in supplication, guided by faith and daring, they hadn't prayed in whispers alone. The forest, evolutionary mastery, wove chaos into opportunity, tendrils drawing them closer to destiny. Inch by inch, freedom sketched its promise beyond fabrications, leading them down ancient paths into the vivid embrace of hope. Tom, harnessing determination and elusive skill, continued his frenetic dance. With each near miss, the urgency for this endeavor crescendoed, but his reward echoed brighter than bullets designed to extinguish dreams. Eventually, daylight surrendered beneath fate's measure, the fugitive illusion reclaiming his game. Tom inevitably succumbed to the sniper's pinpoint calculations, splaying upon the loamy floor, but unwavering. His diversion had worked, painted across his mind the relief of survival once negotiated through friends spared beyond the shot of desolation he intercepted. In the sunlight veiling their flecked figures, the remaining huddled four broke free from death's shadow, cascades of echoes fading into silence as they reached the valley's edge. Indifference gave way to breathless joy, their precious friendships forged anew in fire and turmoil. They stumbled onto a dirt road that stretched enigmatically through the forest, their laughter bubbling from relief mingled with grief for Tom, who had bought them the chance for life. His sacrifice, a reminder of the blurry lines between heroism and friendship, reverberated through the space they left behind. Epilogue: The Silent Echo. Months later, the group reconvened in a quiet cafe in the heart of the city, a somber embrace clouding their reunion. News of the incident had died down, wrapped in investigative red tape and whispered folklore, a sniper's identity still cloaked in mystery, perhaps forever. Emily, now sharing more candidly about her brother's dealings, was comforted by the continued strength she found in her friends. Secrets had solaced their fears, revealing the true value of trust, neither bound by territory nor limited by circumstance. Mark had sworn off wilderness adventures, preferring the grounding rush of urban life, where threats outlined clarity, confined by reason. His humor, though tempered, returned, reassuring them with light in every conversation. Lisa, finding purpose in her experience, had begun writing their story, a story of resilience, allegiance, and unwritten destinies shadowing light. Sarah, forever grateful for inclusion and survival, became a pillar within their group, committed to understanding what motivated hearts in times of unfathomable choices. And Tom, a loss mourned deeply, yet celebrated eternally. His bravery was a silent echo, a reflection of hope that looped them back to that day in the forest, where decisions were raw and survival was immediate. Each life spared a tribute honored through embraced continuities remembered. Seasons would change, and forests would continue to stretch across landscapes both majestic and menacing. Yet in their shared silent marks lay a survival story etched with friendship, relentless in reminding them they were never silent. They conquered fear, not with weapons, but with loyalty and love that always knew to carry its echo back to their resolve. In the tale of the forest, whispered beneath the tall Welsh trees, where shadows dance and sunlight traces boundaries unknown, a mythos grew around those five friends, bonded forever by a camping trip that had been so much more than a mere escape from routine. As the city breathed its perpetual tune around them, their hearts found rhythm once more, beating steadily in unison, forever charging the silent marks life had scripted across their souls.